It's safe to say that the Canada you likely grew up in is no longer the Canada that you and I live in. For example, things are suddenly impossible to afford. The idea of owning a home is out of sight for millions of Canadians. Maybe you realize that entry-level, low-skilled jobs are filled with people who aren't even born in Canada. Maybe you've also realized that our trains and planes no longer run on time, or that Canadian infrastructure is failing. Or, for example, that our cities are unusually filthy and dangerous to live in. But perhaps the most striking condition of New Canada, if we can call it that, is the complete and total collapse of the Canadian justice system. For the first time in most of our lives, we are seeing political prisoners in Canada, while repeat violent criminal offenders are released back onto the streets through our revolving door bail system. You see, as repeat violent criminal offenders and even accused murderers are released back onto the streets, the so-called Coots 4, who have been charged with conspiracy to commit murder of an RCMP officer, a serious crime, have been held in jail for over 515 days. Well, we don't actually know why, because a court order prohibits publishing those details. What on earth is going on in this country? I mean, to say something is broken would be an epic understatement. Drop a like in the video, help us out by subscribing to the True North YouTube channel, and the comment question for the episode is this: what do you think is behind the push to reform bail and get repeat violent criminals back onto the streets? Let me know in the comments, and let's get into it. On Monday, the Ontario Provincial Police issued a rare statement warning the public about a registered sex offender living at a children's camp for kids with autism. Lauriston Maloney, a man with 16 criminal charges related to trafficking and several prior convictions related to trafficking minors, was living at the house where his wife, Amber Maloney, was running the unfortunately named Beating the Odds children's camp for kids with autism. After news outlets picked up this story that a registered sex offender was living at a children's camp for kids with autism, some of the most vulnerable children in our society, a small protest was planned by mothers who had sent their children to this facility just even a few days prior to this story breaking the news. Well, I attended that protest yesterday morning and spoke directly with parents who had sent their children to this camp. Listen as one mother breaks down while discussing what her and her child had been through and her reaction to the shocking news released by the police on Monday. Take a listen.
My name is Candace Williamson. My son is 8 years old. He's severe autistic, nonverbal, fully nonverbal. He loved this place in the beginning. He loved coming here. He was progressing very well. Past couple weeks, I was getting messages from the owner, Amber, asking me to hang out with her and her husband, go up to their cottage. They have a hot tub. I deserve to relax. They know what I go through. I don't know if that was trying to groom me, but also I was supposed to go there yesterday, Tuesday, and hang out with them until I found this out on Monday.
Thank God.
And I have a friend of mine who her son comes here. We've been friends since high school. And after we found this out, we talked, and both of our stories matched. They were trying to lure her there as well to go hang out with them at the cottage. My child has been acting very different. The past couple of weeks, he's having super meltdowns before he would come here. He loved it in the beginning. Melissa, the senior therapist, she's called, which I don't think any of these therapists are qualified. My one son's other therapist, Riley, I don't believe she's involved in this. She ended up telling me that none of the therapists have graduated. None of them are certified. I don't know why I wasn't told this. I don't know why it wasn't disclosed that this man has these charges. I don't know why he's protected. I don't know what to think, to be honest. I'm terrified for my son and these kids.
The day prior, on Tuesday night, Maloney was interviewed by CTV News and dismissed the concerns released by the police, saying that it wasn't a danger for him to be around children, despite him being a registered sex offender. Maloney and his wife, Amber Maloney, the woman running this facility, said that he had no interaction with the children at all. Well, another mother at this protest who had sent her child to this camp for over a year accused Maloney of lying and CTV of being fake news, saying that she has receipts that this man was interacting with the children at this camp. Take a listen. Does your son go to this camp, has been to this camp? Do you know people that have gone to this camp and been here?
He's been going here for a year and a half between IBI therapy services, behavioral services, and the camp.
And yesterday, the man said that he went on did a CTV interview, said that the police are not telling the truth, that they're intentionally trying to make this out to be something that it isn't, but they took the extraordinary step to warn the public. Surely there must be something going on. What do you make of the fact that he seems to be denying his own charges, which are on the record?
He's lying. CTV is fake news. I have text messages from that man from June 25th, July 25th. No, June 25th. He was with my son, wanting to drop my son off at home. His father picked him up, and his father seen him in the kitchen. I see him here 3 days a week at least with the kids. He's a liar.
So the idea that he says and his wife says that he has a different job and he leaves the house, but it's just a house. So it doesn't sound logical that someone who lives in the house wouldn't have access to the children. You're saying that that's a straight up lie.
It's a lie. He's a subpar contractor who relies on his employees to do the jobs for him while he's at home all day.
And last question, what do you make of the fact that the police only notified the public on Monday about this, and they likely would have known about this man's rap sheet for a year plus? It seems like quite a late announcement.
It was late, and I understand that there is an active investigation still going on, and when the media and people find out what that entails, they'll understand why it was delayed.
Last night, Lauriston Maloney and Amber Maloney were arrested by the Ontario Provincial Police, facing multiple charges related to human trafficking. These charges include recruiting, exercising control, exploitation, assault, forcible confinement, and financial benefit from committing a crime. The Maloneys are no longer on the street, and for the moment are no longer a threat to the public. But that is cold comfort to mothers who had sent their children to this facility for over a year, not knowing who was really behind this facility. Now, this raises some serious questions about what the Ontario Provincial Police were doing, letting a facility like this remain open for so long while knowing that a registered sex offender lived at the residence. That public statement by the Ontario Provincial Police released on Monday mirrors a similar statement issued around 10 days ago by the Winnipeg Police, warning the public about the release of a repeat violent sex offender known as Leslie Wayne Oliver Mercredi. You see, the Winnipeg Police know almost for certain that Mercredi is going to reoffend. The police even state explicitly that Mercredi is at high risk to reoffend in a sexual manner. All children are at risk, particularly females. You know, for all we know, Mercredi is back on the streets planning to attack his next victim. But you know who isn't out on the streets right now? The Coots Four. These four men, Chris Lisak, Chris Carbert, Anthony Olenek, and Jerry Morin, have been held without trial in jail for over 515 days on charges for conspiracy to commit the murder of an RCMP officer. These four men were participating in the Coots border blockade, and due to two undercover RCMP agents, they were caught up in a sting operation, allegedly trying to get weapons for, as they are charged, allegedly to commit the murder of an RCMP officer. These men have been held in jail for 515 days, denied even the most basic rights given to some of the worst violent offenders. No bail and no trial date set. As is written in this opinion piece published in Newsweek magazine by Gordon McGill titled Justin Trudeau's Political Prisoners. These are serious charges which should imply serious evidence presented at an expeditious trial. The evidence on offer is vague and ambiguous. Text messages, testimony from two undercover RCMP officers working the crowd at the Coots protest site, and a widely circulated photo of allegedly confiscated weapons that provided the main justification for the invocation of the Emergencies Act. Whatever the charges against them, the denial of bail is an egregious departure from the norm and has been given no explanation. As Donald Best, a former detective and 15-year veteran of the Toronto Police Service, has pointed out, everybody gets bail, including a suspect accused of first-degree murder of a Toronto police officer, and somewhat ironically, a member of Antifa who drove his Jeep into a Freedom Convoy protest site in Winnipeg, Manitoba. These are political prisoners, pure and simple, McGill writes. They are being denied basic rights due to even the most violent of criminals because they are on the wrong side of the Trudeau government. They are being used as a fig leaf, the last shred of Trudeau's legitimacy for invoking the Emergencies Act and for the massive overreach of freezing bank accounts and seizing assets that it incurred. The case of Tamara Lich is also a perfect example of what's going on in this country. After Tamara Lich was arrested at the Freedom Convoy and charged with counseling to commit mischief, Lich was the subject of a nationwide manhunt after she apparently breached bail conditions by daring to take a photo at a gala dinner, standing beside the wrong people, I guess. As Olenek, Morin, Carbert, and Lezak are sitting in jail awaiting trial, which will likely be next year, legislation like Bill C-75 passed by the Trudeau government back in 2018 specifically states that special consideration should be given to the accused who have Indigenous and other, quote, members of vulnerable populations. Furthermore, a bill called Bill C-5 by the Trudeau government was introduced to shrink mandatory minimum sentencing to, quote, address the over-incarceration rate of Black and marginalized Canadians and Indigenous peoples. So thanks to Justin Trudeau and his bow tie-wearing Justice Minister, David Lametti, we now have a revolving door bail system that releases violent repeat offenders and locks up political prisoners. That is the state of the country right now. And that is squarely on the Prime Minister. For example, Umar Zamir, a man accused of committing first-degree murder against Toronto police officer Jeffrey Northrup, is out on bail right now. The accused murderer of 28-year-old Greg Pirchala, the OPP officer, was released out on bail before he allegedly committed this murder because a judge was weighing his Indigenous background. An innocent mother who was shot dead in broad daylight in downtown Toronto just 2 weeks ago was allegedly killed by a man released out on bail. And the accused murderer of 16-year-old Gabriel Magalhaes outside of a Toronto bus stop was also released on bail before allegedly committing this heinous act. Now, this is happening across the country. Repeat violent offenders are being released out on bail, almost certain to reoffend, while other Canadians charged with other offenses seem to be not given the same treatment. So is it really any surprise that we're seeing this in our country today? Interestingly, the public statements issued by the Winnipeg Police about McCready and by the OPP about Maloney both state clearly that charter rights are being upheld for both McCready and Maloney. In fact, in the OPP statement, they say that they recognize Maloney's charter rights and freedoms and that they cannot be infringed. Interesting, because I didn't see anything from the Winnipeg Police and the Ontario Provincial Police about upholding the charter rights of non-violent Canadians at the Freedom Convoy protests. That didn't seem to be an issue for them, but they did go out of their way to express that the charter rights for Maloney must be upheld. Ratio of the week time. The winner this week is Chrystia Freeland. It's been a while since we've given Chrystia Freeland some recognition for being a ratio expert, but she really has a knack of getting humiliated on Twitter. Take a look at this latest tweet that she released just yesterday. Canada's plan to bring down inflation is working, Freeland writes. And she has a nice graphic saying that Canada's inflation is the lowest in the G7, only at 2.8%. Well, for whatever reason, this didn't really pass the smell test for a lot of Canadians. 3,381 replies to only 1,927 likes. Take a look at some of these comments. What Freeland is not saying: food prices have increased by over 9%, translating to a nearly 20% increase in 2 years, the fastest growth in more than 40 years. Mortgage interest costs have also significantly increased, rising over 30% in the past year due to the Bank of Canada's attempt to control inflation. Rent has also risen with an increase of 5.8% in the past year. Food, housing, and utilities are way up. These are necessities in life and the most expensive items we buy. Inflation isn't down. I disagree, writes this user. Housing, fuel, food, none included in the numbers. You are misleading Canadians. Almost 600 likes on that reply. Yeah, nice try, Christian Freeland. I know you like to try and also fudge the numbers, like that one time you spoke at a grocery store and took the price tags off the food behind you. Aren't you proud of how we're doing in this country? Shouldn't food prices be down? All right, everyone, that's going to do it for us this week on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Harrison Faulkner, and this is Ratio.